I was trying to find out who was on the Canadian Armed Forces task force that compiled the Surgeon General's report, but I couldn't find the names listed anywhere.
So
So
it's
I don't
kind of
think we're
interesting because they do list the references that he uses to compile it. So the couple of the key references is that the WHO reports they use are old WHO reports, and they cherry pick the information which they include. So where they cite the lack of definitive answers, right? That's what they quote out of the WHO report. What they don't quote is the actual case reports, where the actual where they show where the person has had that one pill and then reacted, or how violent they reacted to the medication, where to the point of being able to multiply stab themselves in the head over and over and over again. I mean, to go past that pain threshold, right, and to inflict that kind of trauma onto yourself. I mean, that's a break in psychosis.
No, obviously psychosis at that moment.
So they leave that stuff out, and then they do the same thing with Walter Reed Army Medical Center.
Well, originally, a lot of people don't know this side of the thing, or maybe you do, but they actually gave a treatment dose of Mefloquine to Guantanamo Bay prisoners as they arrived, of 1,250 milligrams. And that just blows my mind that they would give that big of a dose to somebody, you know?
Well, this is the part that's not included in the Surgeon General's report, right? So they cherry pick. They say, okay, well, we have this information from this report, right? But that's not the entire report, and it doesn't tell you the fact that, oh, well, we're actually using this as a torture device too, right? And then the other...
there's things you can go look up at the CIA using Mefloquine as part of a chemical torture, or to get people to admit to things, you know, whatever. And that it gets a little muddied water because it's hard to find any declassified reports that you can actually see what's going on, right? So we're only left to speculate with little crumbs of information that come our way, which never leads to a good time. But cat mat, that's something we could probably
cat mat. Oh, I was hoping you'd bring that up. Yeah. So what do you know about cat mat?
I'm not versed as well as, like, say, John Dow or anything. I'm only just in the last few years even finding out about the existence of cat mat and Dr. Keystone.
Yes. So I strongly suspect, and I discussed this with John, that cat mat authored the report.
I'm thinking the same.
Yeah, and at the very least, they said this is what you can include, this is what you can't. What's really interesting on the report is that isn't so much what's in it, and to an extent what's not in it, but how it's treated. It's treated as if it is research.
When it's not.
It's not.
Opinions of government.
No, it is one opinion. It is the opinion of the author, or the acclaimed author, right? So the acclaimed author is the Surgeon General, right? So this is apparently is his opinion, right? And that's all it is.
Who advises on tropical medicine, though, in Canada?
Exactly, right? So this is where
that's been doing in the 1990s.
Yeah.
It's a good way to go.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really very deceptive. It's deliberate. Somebody thought it out extremely well. I was very disappointed because I worked with Brigadier General McClay when he was a captain.
Okay.
And he has an incredible analytical mind. And I would never have suspected that he would have just rolled over like that and allowed this report with no information to be treated as a report which is informative.
I know from my personal experience going to the committee in 2016 and then having that report come out post that meeting, I felt like it was a slap in the face what they did in the Surgeon General's report. It made me upset to read it, but it showed me their stance was unwilling to move, you know, that yeah, they were going to abide by the product monograph now, but they were unwilling to admit to anything that of significance for the benefit of us moving our cause forward, you know. And
the current Surgeon General, back to the Parliamentary Committee testimony, basically said, you know, like, well, this is the policy and this is the way it's done. Therefore, we have the policies and procedures in place. Well, we may not have always followed them well, but I mean, that doesn't really matter because they're in place now. Therefore, all the information has been dealt with. And it's like, that's not what it means.
Yeah, he said that the Canadian clinical practice guidelines were followed, but they didn't really give us any indication of what those guidelines were and how Mefloquine got past the guidelines, you know.
Well, they weren't followed because they were required to. Essentially, what he's saying, if I understand it correctly, is because we had some deployments prior to Somalia where we actually collected some data and information. So I think they may have collected data and information on 300 people out of right what they should have. It's possible. I'm not 100% because I haven't seen it. But because we collected this data, we kind of knew already that we weren't going to have a problem. Therefore, we didn't need to collect any more data. And that's basically what he was saying. And that's exactly what was said back in the Somalia inquiry when Auger was the Surgeon General then, right? And the Ministry of Health presenters back during the Somalia inquiry basically said the same thing. We already know it's safe, so we didn't need to.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes me upset is that had they have done what they need to do in the 1992-3 era, I was only in grade 2 and 3 in that time. I should have never been given that pill in Afghanistan had the investigation been allowed to go forward and the truth of Mefloquine be discovered and recognized.
Well, we wouldn't see the injuries we see out of Rwanda either. I mean, we can't exclude PTSD because of what those guys saw.
Oh yeah.
But what we know Scott, Scott Smith was affected by Mefloquine. We know that's not something that they can deny or cover, right? This was a psychotic break.